Okay, it is time for step 3 of your course spanning project, which hopefully you realize by now is a family engagement activity, creating one, implementing one. You've had the template for this project available since day 1 of class, so I hope that you've looked through that some and kind of seen what's coming. But it is time to start thinking about planning that activity. Now that from steps 1 and 2, we know a whole lot about 3 of our families. Hopefully, learning about those 3 families also helped you be more attuned in some ways to the other families as well. Even if you didn't formally interview them, maybe it helped you start seeing some other things about them. Because the reality is, we're not always going to interview all of our families, right? But the idea was to get you thinking outside the box about them and noticing them in new ways. So that's what we did in steps 1 and 2. Now we're ready for step 3. So your first instructions are to administer this survey right here. You're going to administer it to at least 3 families from your field site. It does not, well, here as I say, right here, you're only required to collect surveys from 3 families, but I would consider asking more in order to ensure that you get enough responses, because let's face it, families aren't always going to return them and you need 3 returns. Try to select different families than those you interviewed in steps 1 and 2, not only to avoid duplication, but to give them a break and to gain multiple perspectives. Of course, if you're sending it out to all your families, they're going to be included in that. We'll come back to this below in a second, but here's what the survey looks like right now. It's just a piece of paper. You could print out this paper and give it to families and ask them to return it. It explains that you're doing this for class. And then you're asking them, what ideas would you like to see included in this activity, which you explained up here that you're planning a family activity, or what would make it meaningful for your family? What would be the best time to have this activity? Should snacks or a meal be served? If so, would they be willing to help with that? Do you find educational handouts helpful? Like if they come to a family engagement activity, are they going to expect to take something home with them? Do they have suggestions for a guest speaker? You do not have to have a guest speaker, but maybe they're wanting somebody, an expert who can talk to them about nutrition or something like that. How can this activity be culturally sensitive for your family? How would you like to be involved in this activity? Maybe their answer is I can't. But maybe you'll find people who are wanting to volunteer that you had no idea. And any other thoughts or suggestions. So you can print this off and send it home and hope that you get them all back. Beg them to bring them back to you. Or if you need to, you can reformat it to better suit your families. Maybe you've got an app or some kind of digital communication that your facility uses and you need to format it for that. That's fantastic. I love using Google Forms. They're super easy and a great way to collect survey information. So if you want to use that, if you don't know how to use that and want to Zoom with me and me show you, I can do that. Um, if you did that, you could have some multiple choice questions like time, food, could be yes, no. You could have different times that they could choose from, things like that. So it could make it a little bit easier on them to click buttons rather than write things in. So however you do it, you just need to do it. You need to do it early because you've got to get them to, you've got to get them to them, you've got to get them back, and then you've got to reflect on it. So that's why you've been given 2 weeks. You do not need to turn in the completed surveys. However, you need to keep them in case I ask for them. And the simple truth of that is that if I suspect that you used AI to complete this and they are 3 completely made up families, I'm going to ask to see your surveys. I might ask for the names of the families and talk to them if I really suspect that you used AI. I think it would be easier to actually do this than to try to make AI seem realistic in this case. So just get to know your families, ask them these questions. You can even, if you want, you can casually ask these questions throughout the week as parents come and go and have your own piece of paper for each parent and write down whatever answers you get. If that would be easier for you than sending them home and hoping you get stuff back, that's fine. But do have some proof that families were talked to, and then just write about it genuinely, what you learned. Okay, so here's what you're going to write. You're going to summarize common themes or patterns across the surveys. What did you notice from various families? You're going to share anything that surprised you or shifted your thinking. Like, did it surprise you that they need to know more information about nutrition, that that's something that parents are thinking about? Reflect on how the family feedback will influence your future activity ideas, and include at least one specific suggestion or preference from the families that you do plan to use. Something that they put on there, like that they want a guest speaker, for example. Okay, I do know somebody who come talk to us about nutrition or whatever. Um, okay, so you're going to do that in your template, which is right here. Here's your step 2, and here's step 3. You're going to delete this part in red and type your paragraph here, okay? It's already in Times New Roman in 12-point font, so you're going to leave it. You're going to change it to black instead of red. You're going to leave it just like it is, double spaced, Times New Roman, 12 point. You need to make sure you introduce what you're writing about. There's no prompt in this template, so it needs to be really clear. Something like, I recently surveyed the families of children in my classroom to find out what they are looking for in a family engagement activity. That's exactly how I would start my paragraph. I sent home 10 surveys or printed out on paper, or I sent home 10 surveys via email or whatever you did. I received 4 back, and the summary of the results is as follows. And then write about what you learned. Okay. But you need to introduce as though the person reading this template has no idea what you were assigned. Introduce what you're writing about. Okay. And then looking back at this, okay. So you're going to write about those, and then you're going to start actually brainstorming based on steps 1 and 2 and what you learned about families, and based on these surveys, what activities you might actually do. So, brainstorming is a step toward creating a meaningful, inclusive family engagement activity. Drawing from your earlier reflections on families in your care and your own cultural lens, you will generate concrete, respectful, and engaging ideas. These ideas should support family education, classroom participation, and deeper community family involvement. And it's broken into those 3 categories. So you're going to come up with 3 activities or strategies that could educate parents on something. You could, like nutrition, for example, you're going to come up with 3 activities that would increase parent participation. And you're going to come up with 3 activities that would be in the realm of family advocacy and support. So for each idea, so each of the 3 ideas, so 9 total ideas, you're going to write a brief explanation, and you're going to connect it to what you've learned about your own culture, like one of your activities. This would be a good activity because I have learned about culture that blah, blah, blah. What you learned about, or you could connect it to what you learned from the family surveys. Well, the surveys told me that parents are very interested in this. Therefore, this is a good activity because it will do this. Or what you've learned from module 2, like textbook chapter 3, videos, readings, anything in the module. Okay. You can go back to module 1 if you needed to. I'm not sure why I didn't include that. Module 1 or 2, but it does need to be course materials, okay? Not additional research, things that have been provided in your textbook, in videos, in handouts. I don't think I've posted many of those in these chapters, but something from the modules. You may use or adapt ideas from the provided list below, or you can create your own, or you can get something from another source. Just say that that's where you got it. But every idea must include a justification, just to show why it's meaningful, inclusive, responsive to the needs of your family. So the justification, like I was talking about, like this activity supports what I learned about culture. This activity is exactly what the families are looking for. This activity is supported by, I can't remember the author for this class, but Paris in the book, blah, 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 when she states, and then a quote from the book, or a video by name. Okay, so here are ideas. This is not a checklist. You're not trying to place one of these in each of these categories. These are just some ideas that you could expand upon, or you can go elsewhere for ideas. You do need to cite your sources, at least 2 specific references to chapter 3 and 1 reference to the module. So that's from up here in these 9 explanations. So like I said, you can explain it by culture, or justify it by culture. You can justify it by the surveys, but at least 3 of these 9 need to be justified from the textbook or something else in chapter 2. And you, like I said, you would introduce that as, you wouldn't just say chapter 2 of our textbook. Whoever's reading your template might not know what textbook that is. You need to cite the book, you need to refer to the book in writing, and then provide a citation at the bottom. And in module 1, I think I give you a citation for your textbook. I'm not sure, but I definitely have videos on how to create citations. So use those if you're going to cite a video or something like that. So what you're turning in is your template with steps 1 and 2 already completed. And then now you're adding step 3. So that's your survey summary and your family engagement brainstorm chart. So just some ideas. So what's going to take the longest about this is getting those surveys out to families and back. So please start early. Please read the rubric. Use this like a checklist. Think to yourself, okay, I want to get full points. So what am I going to do from this column in each of these sections to get all these points? And like, I used to print rubrics off and I'd mark them out as I knew that I did each thing. And then this tells you what you're gonna, if you leave certain parts out, the points are going to be taken off. So that is step 3 of your course spanning project. And I hope you're enjoying getting to know all these families better.